Hi, Doug. Thanks for joining me today. We go back a long way, probably about 20, 25 years when I first marched into the Army Battalion in Australia. You were one of the first people I worked with, and it was a great experience. And before we get into it, I just want to do a quick intro of Doug Sheridan, a Director, VP, Army Sniper Association in Australia, 33 years with the Australian Army in Special Operations, SAS. He held an MBA and has done the Company Directors course, as well as a few courses with the Harvard Business School. So welcome, Doug.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Dave. Look, a real pleasure joining you today. And mate, I have some very pleasant memories of us working together in the middle to later period of 90s, mate. So yeah, good times back then. And I remember you to be all being completely genuine and being a very, very diligent and good soldier, mate, highly talented. So the pleasure was mine back then.
Hey, Doug, we're talking today to really kind of pick your brains. And look, I knew you was a brilliant leader back then, and obviously done a lot of stuff between then and now. And what we're kind of missing in corporate and government is some of that leadership aspect that may go through, leadership, governance, teams. And there's a lot of people out there who want to get it right, who want to learn more, and who certainly want to learn from the experience and kind of take away how you did it, how people like yourself did it, and kind of what you learned. So maybe if we start with a little bit about your past coming up to where you are now.
Yeah, look, just to get the 60-second bio out of the road, mate, early doors, I suppose. I grew up in Sydney, did all my formative years on the east coast of Australia, culminated in doing high school went to a Catholic Christian Brothers College in Brisbane, and then, graduated there in the late 80s, and then eventually joined the Army Reserve while still in grade 12. At some point there, I decided that I didn't want to do it in a part-time capacity. I either wanted to do it full-time or not at all, which led me to join the regular Army in 91. So that led me up to joining the Australian Army, specialising or going, my category was infantry. I've been ultimately posted to a mechanised infantry battalion, where I met you, Dave, in Sydney. And that saw me through to about 97. I did a number of specialist courses whilst in that battalion, deployed 3 times to Malaysia, once to Western Sahara as part of the United Nations on a peace monitoring mission there. I did selection for the Special Air Service Regiment, Australia, in 1997, and that I subsequently specialised as a water operator or a person that specialises in water insertion, diving, subsurface diving, swimmer release from submarines, small boats, insertion, deploying onto naval ships, small army boats, and Zodiacs, rubber duckies, people might know them as. So all things water there. In that, I did a range of, I guess, special, conventional and non-conventional roles, both war roles, counter-terrorism roles, domestic and international, and special warfare, that is dealing with, or I guess coalescing with Indigenous forces in other countries to enable them, to train them and enable them to, I guess, to fight and create actions in support of their own agendas and for ultimately democracy and freedom in their own countries, is one way of saying it. Whilst in Special Air Service, I deployed to, I was the first squadron or the first boots on the ground into East Timor in 1999, somewhere around September there. We were part of an international force, East Timor, but the Special Forces component under Chapter 7 peacemaking we were called Response Force. Perhaps interestingly to your local listeners, that comprised an Australian SAS squadron, but 1 troop of New Zealand SAS and 1 troop of British Special Boat Squadron, or 1 troop of those as well. So that led me into 2000. I was on team doing domestic counterterrorism for a number of years, and then also deployed to Solomon Islands there. So that takes me up to 2001 and 9/11, Dave.
I mean, that's quite a history, Doug, and you've been through a lot, you've seen a lot, and it really interests me to ask that you must have worked with so many people in so many different situations, especially with teams, small teams. What was the leadership like? And when we make a parallel to what you've done, and it's a hard parallel to make because I know civilian life and corporate's much, much different, but what kind of motivated those teams, and how did you get through kind of tough times and keep going for those objectives?
Yeah, it's interesting. So to answer that, I'll fast forward just to I guess encapsulate that leadership piece. From there, I joined the Australian Federal Police, and I was an air marshal post 9/11 for a while, an international, what they called a senior air marshal. and I led teams into other countries on operational flights. But I then morphed into a federal agent as a police tactical operator, and I was the international or offshore Australian Federal Police sniper team leader. Whilst there, I also took military leave and deployed with the Special Operations Task Group as a sniper team commander into Afghanistan, and also did exchanges with the German Special Police Group, or GSG 9, as part of the Air Marshal program. I did time on exchange with the hostage rescue team, which is part of the counterterrorism or hostage rescue component of the US Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI. And in that, I did, I think I came across there in Auckland, where you are, Dave, and did 3 weeks with the New Zealand Police Special Tactics Group as well. So I got I think a wide spectrum of leadership experience there. Going back to your question, I think, as you no doubt agree, leadership is extremely hard, and it's leadership is not an objective you ever arrive at. You're always on the journey to being the perfect leader, and I acknowledge I'll never arrive there. It's an Everest I'll never summit. I can only learn and just improve and be the best version of myself as I go on. Early days with leadership, I found, surprisingly enough, when I developed the confidence as a soldier, I found soldiering leadership in a conventional sense quite easy, or not easy. I found it came naturally to me, because all I really needed to do in the canned or siloed environment of a conventional infantry battalion was be a nut. Just be as fit as I can be, throw myself into my technical skills, be as competent as I could, be loyal to my superiors, be loyal to my troops, my section, the platoon I belong to, stay fit and just be as competent as possible, and be as ambitious and single-minded, focused towards soldiering as I could be. And I found that resonated with others, and they just followed. I found it came quite naturally to me. Later, it didn't, when I moved into different roles in other industries and outside the Army and different parts of the Army. Initially, I found it, I said the term easy, it wasn't easy. I found that it came naturally to me, is a better way to put it.
And I remember that. I remember working with you for a short time, different times, and it seemed very natural as well. And those elements you talk about, I'm just thinking when you're talking that, even myself, there's a lot of soldiers who come out and they come into the environment, in civvy world and corporate, and they find it hard to get that leadership knowledge and what they did, say in the Army, into the corporate. They try and transfer it, but it doesn't go down very well. So what I'm seeing now is corporate is starting at last to identify and see the value in that sort of military training and military leadership, and are starting to ask, how do we do this? How do we make it natural? How do we make it more simple? And how can we get people to really lead properly?
Yes, and I think a person coming out of the military and or a paramilitary environment or police, they bring a lot of transferable skills, but call that the iron fist, and then imagine that they need to find their own velvet glove to place around that fist, because those leadership approaches won't immediately work on a civilian population that is not compelled to blindly follow what you say. And in a lot of cases, they're not necessarily as life motivated or focused on their work. It's not such a large focus of their entire life. And there's that saying, a lot of soldiers, or very, very committed soldiers, first responders, police officers, law enforcement personnel, they live to work. It's literally their raison d'etre. It's why they get out of bed in the morning. It's what floats their boat. But that's unrealistic, because I think we know on greater reflection, if we take a macro look at life and the general workforce in all countries, people don't live to work, they work to live, they work to get by. So how do you then motivate a workforce like that? Well, it's leadership, but then how do you lead people? And when I say lead in the true sense, how do you influence them to come and join you willingly in the cause that you're asking them to? There's the challenge. With predominantly a somewhat, in general, less motivated workforce, who are also, to compound that, they're less compelled or forced institutionally to necessarily follow you or do what you say.
I agree. And I found that, was it 20 years ago, 25 years ago when I got out, it was very apparent that there was a certain way of doing things. And I found that there was a simple way of doing things or leading, but it wasn't really fitting into the right mechanism of corporate. So they had a process. And I'm just wondering, from your wide, vast experience and then doing things like the MBA, getting into governance. How do you see, what do you want to improve on with the way things are done in the corporate world or government world that you were really kind of honing into or would like to see some improvements?
There's a lot of buzzwords. Where I'd like to see the improvement is the buzzwords being taken seriously and demonstrated. So the buzzwords that go around are, and as we know, buzz phrases like servant leadership, buzzwords like authenticity, accountability, in some cases loyalty. These are the words I'm hearing. Do I see them displayed regularly and or in entirety? I don't. And I can start to step through those. Something like authenticity. And someone spoke to this. I was listening to someone speak not so long ago, and they spoke well to the point that I've always thought, and that is no one wants the authentic you. It's selfish. For you to bring, if I brought my authentic Doug to the workplace, that's selfish and it's focused on me and has no place. No one wants the authentic me. They don't. They don't want the dad jokes at work. They don't. They don't want if I'm having a bad day. They don't want me. They don't want me to start reminiscing about bloody past war stories that happened 2 decades ago to me. They're not. That's not the authentic me that they want. They do want the authenticity insofar as they want transparency. They want to know they're speaking to a person, and they want to connect with a person, even at an acquaintance and professional level, where they can start to engender trust with them, and they can believe in what you say. That's the authenticity to it, as in you are transparent, you're honest, and you follow through with what you say. That's the authenticity. We don't go overboard with authenticity. And I think that's where some leaders are making the error. You still need to role model behaviors, and your reports or people that you work for, if you're leading, don't need to see the weaker moments of your working day when you're struggling, when you're experiencing doubts. In a lot of ways, that they're experiencing all their own, so they don't have time for yours, and it's an embarrassment for them to have to encounter that and navigate it. They just want to see you. They just want to be led. They want someone to show them direction in a positive, authentic, uplifting, consistent, and constant manner, without the baggage of displaying negative human emotions or human emotions that are less positive along the way.
Agree. And I would have seen that a lot too, where maybe people are trying to lead or they try and lead too hard or they don't put themselves in the shoes of the people they're leading. And when they do that communication, it doesn't hit the mark or it goes off stage, or that's when people kind of think, is this really aligned? And just listening to that, Doug, one thing that we're experiencing now, and it's really come up over the past couple of years in Australia and New Zealand with our natural disasters, disruptions through corporate government, whatever it might be. And there is, as you well know, there's leadership in good times and it's done a certain way and it gets quite confident, maybe a little bit complacent. Then there's a leadership in the emergency situations and crisis. And I think what's happening is people are trying to make a connection from the good times that can happen now to the next minute that we live, and something else happens as a crisis. How do they transition to actually being a leader in crisis, being the same person? And I think there's a lot of confusion about that. And I've even seen some organisations have leaders for the good times and leaders for the crisis. What do you think, and what would you maybe put out as some steps or things that people could do, organisations could do to handle both types of leadership?
That's a very interesting statement, Dave. I'd approach it in reverse. What you say is entirely valid, and I'd approach it in reverse to answer. We know in times of crisis that leaders get a certain tolerance or allowance to drop the niceties. Go here, do that. I need to do this now. Don't question me, because if you do, I don't have time to answer it. Lives are at stake. People will die. Catastrophic things will occur. Just do it now. And if you're lucky, I'll explain later. Just do it. So you get an allowance to cut the niceties out of your communication to get a result. So when we move back into the nice times or the calm times or times that are not catastrophic or it's not a crisis, you will not be cut that slack. You can't speak to people that way, and it'll have less than productive results if you do. So how does a leader that is good in that context de-escalate their delivery of leadership and management to make it productive and workable in the good times, as you say? But in line with the good times too are the long times. So we also, the forming, norming, storm, the forming, storming, norming, team dynamics. Once we're going past norming and we get to a high performing team, what's next? And normally in team theory, you you might dissolve the team and start again, or something like that. But how do you then keep that high-performing team at that level or near to for an indefinite period in the good times? So my belief is that one is being authentic and being human, but it's not displaying human weaknesses that have no place in the workplace. So being authentic, I think it's being loyal, and I believe loyalty, and I've always tried to deliver loyalty downwards before I ask for it upwards. And in fact, I never ask for it. I give it down and I make it known early in a transparent way that if someone's in my team, they have my loyalty whilst ever they do something in good faith, or they meant something, they're trying to achieve a good result, they weren't doing anything, they're being transparent. If they make an error, that is fine. They have my loyalty, and I work from a default position that over time, once someone recognizes that, mostly 80% of people, 80% of the time, will return the loyalty to me. So in other words, loyalty that works both ways. I think if people also then believe that you genuinely care about their welfare and their personal development, that's a huge one. And only consistent and constant displays of that over time will convince people of that, I think. And not only that, it works both ways. It engenders enthusiasm. It keeps employees or reports or team members fresh in their role. They feel they're developing on a constant basis. They're going somewhere. And they know that if they're going through a turbulent period in their professional life or personal life, you will carry them. You'll pick them up. When I say carry them, I don't mean carry them and they're performing badly. I mean lift them and bring them through that period until they're firing better, they're feeling better, they're more well, whatever that looks like. And that engenders loyalty again, and it keeps cohesive teams, because those that aren't experienced with that, who are sitting laterally in a team, they witness it and they should take positivity from that. And it also, an underlying benefit of that is it looks after succession. So if you're looking after someone's welfare, but more importantly, their professional development, you are looking after your succession plan behind you. So when you move, there should be one or more ready to step in your position. And I've rarely seen someone who does that wrong. I'll go one step back. I don't see it much in the workplace, that done. People actively and proactively looking to develop their successes behind them for when they move on, whatever that means, moving on. And so I don't see that very often. But when I do see it, I rarely see it hurt someone, because even if that person is made redundant and they've got a successor in their spot, they can go home, they can sleep well at night. They've done the right thing. They've done so professionally, they've done what the organisation or entity has paid them to do. They've been a professional because that's what professionals do. And thirdly, they can sleep well at night because that's what good people do. And that builds reputation.
Definitely. And no, thanks for answering the question. That gives me a lot to work with, especially when you're talking about relationships and about understanding the team and understanding all kind of different forms of environment. Thanks, Doug. So just another question. What are your views on kind of judging or biased in the workplace?
Dave, I think I was optically or visually, I used to judge people quite brutally when I was younger. And what I mean by that is directed towards the task at hand or the role. So in infantry, where fitness and competence, martial competence, that is physical prowess around weaponry and so on, was paramount. If someone looked like they were unable to do that from the onset, for an example, someone looks more overweight than they should be as a combat soldier, I would judge that person accordingly without ever getting to know them. As I've learnt over the years, is that being inclusive in a team is not a nicety. It's not even as we spoke about before, it's not even a team buzzword now, diversity, inclusion. It's essential. For teams must feel safe and valued to perform. 20 years ago, I would have laughed at that statement if someone said it to me. Not now. High-performing teams in a civilian environment need to be inclusive. People need to be safe at all levels, psychosocial, whatever. They need to feel safe and they need to feel valued. So if you judge people from the get-go using your unconscious bias, you are potentially being non-inclusive and shutting people out of a team, or worse still, including them in the team, but they're not really. They're marginalised, they're victimised, they're made to feel like they're a lesser value within that team. So don't pass judgment on someone, and this could be controversial. When I say this, don't judge someone until you've got a right to do so. So you spent some serious time with them. You've watched the highs and lows. You experienced blowback from their negative behaviour for whatever that is, and you've decided that on balance you can do without that person, or they don't bring value to the party, the project, the team. So then go ahead and value them, judge them rather, on a professional basis, but don't do it purely on the outset, at the outset through some unconscious bias you may possess prior to that. And on that, be aware of it. So be aware that you might consciously think you're not, but deep in your ear or deep in the back of your mind, there are unconscious biases that are so deeply ingrained through your life that you will think that you're counteracting them, but you're not. So you need to take active measures, and in some cases, in a board scenario, remove yourself. So in line, say, a conflict of interest, remove yourself from a decision if you feel that there's the slightest chance a decision could be encroaching upon something that may be something that could be influenced by your unconscious bias. Remove yourself from it. So be ethical, but be aware enough to know that even if you think you know, you don't. So just brutally remove yourself from it. And explain why to the rest of the board.
I agree with that. I've been there as well, where I have judged people, and then I've been really surprised by maybe the people I judged, that they were doing extraordinary things, not what I thought, and they were really, really valuable. And this was years ago, like yourself. And then I have learned myself to give everyone a fair chance and make sure everyone's well heard. So just talking about boards and touching on that now, Doug, and especially with your director's course, how do you see kind of boards going, or how do you see may need some improvement at that board level to make that real connection with the organisation, the people who run it, and that kind of relationship?
I feel like most things in life, you're fully in or you're fully out. So don't fence sit with your duties as a director. What I mean by that is, don't pay nothing lip service, including financials. If there's blind spots or things that appear uncomfortable or raise concern on the peripheries of your mind, investigate it. Don't sit back and ignore it, or convince yourself that it's slightly out of your scope of technical skill, therefore you won't explore it. So the big things that come to mind with me in boards is, funnily enough, governance, but drilling in, I mean things like cultural issues and financial issues, the things that will normally spell woe for any organisation: poor culture and or financial issues, inappropriate financial oversight of things or dealings. So take the time to do your background reading on a company prior to joining it, on an entity before joining a board, and ensure that you stay abreast of all the issues that present themselves while you're on that board. In other words, be curious, be active, and be present at all times as a board person. And I know we've spoken in the past, Dave, as a director, you need to come down out of your ivory tower, because people will tell you what they want you to hear. And what you will find in a worst case scenario, and when I learned this when I did my MBA, coming out of the army and police, is that senior executives, they have built a career, highly competent, barely competent or incompetent, whatever level they're at, they've built a career around being articulate and selling ice to Eskimos verbally. So they will convince you of anything, potentially, if you don't ground proof it yourself. That is, get out of your ivory tower, go walk the floor, and do it in a transparent fashion. Don't do it once a year, where the staff on the factory floor, in the offices, out in the field, wherever they are, just think, here this person comes for their annual visit, I'll pay him off with a few party lines and a few platitudes, and he'll keep moving because he was making me nervous, because he's, a director of the board. Do it enough so people start to become familiar with you, and they will start to share things with you, and invite, however painful it may be at times, invite the conversation. It's happened to me not so long ago, where invite it. You may be there 2.5 hours later, but you asked for it. And whilst we don't all have time to spend 2.5 hours talking to a person in a day about some minor part of a workplace, you will get the feedback you need, and there'll be times you have the 5-minute conversation, the 2.5-hour conversation, the whatever conversations, where you glean the real cultural information you need. On that, do it in varied scenarios. So do it whilst maintaining professional distance and however you need to carry yourself. Do it at the Christmas parties, do it at the social functions, do it at night, do it on the weekends, do it during a working day, walk the floor, do it in different scenarios of inappropriate settings, that is, where your workers are engaged in work, organised functions. Do it there. That's the only way you'll truly get a feel what the culture is.
I have to agree. I've seen the best boards and performing organisations that have a good relationship, who do step down, who do have a look and do understand the organisation and they're aligned to it. There's many, unfortunately, who aren't. So that's really, really helpful. And I suppose a really clear pathway now would be talking about what you've just talked about into accountability. And I'm seeing accountability is still a bad word in many organisations, a bit of an aggressive word with some organisations. They don't like talking about people being accountable or they have to be accountable. What's your view on that?
It's interesting, isn't it? Accountability is up there. If it was a Wild Western, accountability would be wearing the black hat, wouldn't it? Accountability up there with mandatory. These are the words that people find aggressive. My feeling is that accountability is a must, but again, it comes back to an inclusive, supportive workplace. And you won't build it overnight, but you will build it if you can, through being consistent and constant. If you can prove to a team, a workplace, that being accountable means if they make a mistake, they won't get, and it's in good faith. They attempted good judgment in good faith. They meant to achieve a good thing. It just went all right for whatever reason. They won't be hung from the yardarm. They'll be encouraged or I guess realigned or retrained or just pointed out how to do it better next time and supported to do it better next time, to be retrained and do it better. And it's got to be at all levels. So it's got to be demonstrated as a leader. Now, you need to be accountable and say, if I made an error, I made an error. We've got to balance that with not being over authentic, as in walking around and apologise for everything every 10 minutes as a leader. Pick those things that you openly admit you could have done better, but do not try to cover up the errors you make. And I think there's a safety net in there. I think there's a very, very good safety valve on that, is if you know it's in your nature and it's your values to be accountable and to admit or acknowledge when you make errors, you're less likely to want to, in your weaker moments, to cover something up. You're less likely because you know that if it becomes public knowledge or wrong, you're less likely to do the wrong thing. Because you know if it becomes public knowledge, it's your values to fess up to it immediately. So it's a bit of a safety mechanism there as well, I think, accountability.
And I think it was a very huge part of the military, being accountable. I think it was never a choice. It was an absolute demand and expectation. And if you weren't, it was seen very, very clearly, very, very quickly. And I see the big difference. Yeah. So no, thanks for that. And that answers it really well. And I think a lot of people could take that away really well as well. One of my last questions, and probably following on for that, is planning and priorities. What's your thinking about that?
Yeah, I had this drummed in me early in my career to plan, and I paid a bit of lip service to it, and then I got away with it when I went into Special Forces and Special Air Service Regiment a lot, because you did exhaustively plan, but a lot of it was so dynamic where you were trying to stay inside the OODA loop of the enemy or the threat, that you were encouraged to not wing it, but be agile and move quickly and do things instinctually. So you got a bit of a free pass there, hall pass around planning sometimes. Not training, but planning, focused planning, pre-mission. But what I've learned as I've got older, that part of being a leader, part of being a good leader, this seems to get lost in the obscuration that is leadership and management nowadays in the corporate and commercial world, is one of the best ways to be a leader. There's soft skills, but there's hard skills. And one of the best ways to be a good leader is to be highly competent at your job. No one says that, I don't think. Rarely. To lead your people well, be very good at what you do. Be very good at it. Because to be very good, no doubt, that's a byproduct of role model behaviours. It's a byproduct of setting a good example. And as we know from sporting teams and being in the military and being anywhere, people love being in a winning team. People can't leave a losing team fast enough. People can't join a winning team fast enough. So be good at what you do. In line with that, I think when you're being a leader, it's highly desirable to be humble, but not self-deprecating. Self-deprecating feeds back into over-authenticity. No one wants a leader walking around staring at their kicking the towing some dirt with their toe, or staring at their feet and being overly humble, or trying to, I guess, admit to faults that are not their own or something or other. So be humble, yes, but over-deprecation has no place being a leader either. You've got to, in line with role model behaviour, you've got to be confident, you've got to be willing to stay the course and display the actions that will allow the whole team to stay the course. I think with planning, Dave, getting back to your question, is I've learnt if you plan well, your team is successful, and they see that there's a measured, constant consistent approach to how you do things and how the team moves and traverses and navigates projects, problems, day-to-day work. They see that and it's appreciated and it makes people feel comfortable. And I suppose on that is with planning, I think as I mature, I'm becoming more and more brutal with how I prioritize. So I brutally prioritize things now. Brutal with tasks and work, try to be kind with people. Two different things. So I'm kind in the approach to people, but I'm brutal with the task, with how I prioritize. I've learned to say no, and now I will strip away anything, brutally strip away if it doesn't value add to what I'm doing. So it must be something I love or something that's a requirement. So my work, I'll be brutal with what I do there. I'll be brutal in my private life, and I'll ensure that I'm brutal with what I strip away from my life to ensure that I give more than adequate time to my family and friends. On family and friends, when it comes to leading, I think what you need to do is identify and culture those good people in your life. Protect them, look after them, cultivate them, keep them close to you because they have valuable assets. Because for whatever reason, people interact. Some people get on, some don't. Because I don't get on with someone else doesn't make them a bad person, vice versa. But for me, there will be people that I'll identify and know in my life that really value add, and they're great people. And I get so much out of my relationship with them. And of course, my family. So identify who they are, hold them close to you, protect those friendships and cultivate them. Don't do wrong by them. Don't let them go to pasture. Don't ignore them. And I think another getting back onto that prioritization is be very wary of the noise. When I say the noise, I mean get up in the morning. I like to attack the day early now. I get up at 4:15, 4:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. I'll get the gym session in or something like that, some kind of physical exercise. I'll do heat therapy or an ice bath or something like that. Get myself ready and prepared for the day. Some of that will be professional reading or something or other. Listen to a podcast on the way to work, something like that. Prepare yourself for the day and attack it. So get up early and attack your day. Going back to that accountability piece, if Dave, if you can bear with me, as I think another part of leadership and the professional culture in general nowadays we could do better is accountability along with standards, along with values, is they shift and change if they're inconvenient to people. So harking back to the point, I think of being a good leader is consistent and constant, because that encourages, I think, confidence from team members. If you're constant and consistent, and in that is they know your values, they can, in a lot of ways, without being boring and predictable and not being agile or non-agile, be predictable in the sense that they know your values, they know how you're going to, they know what you require of them, they can reasonably predict in a good way how you're going to react to something values-wise. They know the standards because the standard dare I say it, the standard you set is the standard you walk by or don't. So they know the standards, and just because you've had a rough night sleeping or you've had a bad weekend or something's going in your personal life, you don't change. You rock up, very professional, you're well turned out. They see the same person pretty much day in, day out, no matter what occurs behind the Wizard of Oz screen. They just see the Wizard of Oz every day. They don't see the little man pulling the levers behind the curtain, whatever that is.
Thanks, Doug. And I like the advice. I like the direction you took. And what you've talked about today is so many examples of leadership. You come from such a wide career that's taken in so many different components. So you've met thousands of people, hundreds of them. You've seen how they tick. And today you've taught me a lot. You always do. And you've really shared a lot, which I know will be valuable for the people watching and listening. Have you got any final thoughts? So when I say final thoughts, we're heading into more uncertainty with the world, with the business, with people and economies and things like that. Any final thoughts on what is key to the individual or the team that they should really be kind of focusing on going forward?
I think we all need to remain open-minded. I think we need to be open to the fact that everything we've ever known could be wrong. So I think you need to approach everything with an open mind on a day-to-day basis. And paraphrasing myself, be open to the fact that listen to other people and be open to the fact that they may have thoughts and views that may sway an opinion you've held for your whole life. In my case, over 50 years. I may bump into someone tomorrow and they may have a compelling argument that may rightfully alter or change my point of view on something. To be open to that. I think you must learn to have the ability to say sorry to the right people, that is. Again, going back to there's no need to be throwing around over gratuitous sorries and platitudes and being overly deprecating or dragging your feet for no reason. But to those people that I talked about before that you identify as extremely important in your life, valuable people, say sorry, move on, be done with it. Say sorry, be genuinely sorry, move on, and reflect on it. So we talk about that. There's a concept, the third space, and I used to teach that when I was in sniping and we know it now in multiple forms, is something's happened, good, bad, or indifferent. And it's always harder when it's been the bad, where you've let yourself down in whatever fashion. Let's use a professional context. You perform poorly and it's really, really upset you, but you need to now move to something else where you're on the hot plate again and you need to perform again. What you need to do is be able to compartmentalize these things and learn. So not ignore, but learn, but show up again for the next serial or iteration. So whatever you've done, stop, pause, give yourself a time period to reflect on what occurred. What could you do better? What did you do wrong? What will you do next time? Then quit it, remove it from your mind as best as possible, show up and refreshed with an open canvas for the next serial iteration, hopefully learning on the multiple times you've reflected in the past.
I agree, and I think it comes down to a lot of self-discipline, as you said before, having a bit of a routine of getting ready for the day, knowing the team, and turning up. I like what you said about turning up consistently in the same way to really install the confidence, keep that relationship, and people really depend and they recognise that strength, I think. So I think that's a really good thing that people can take away. I just
And
want to
Dave,
say thanks.
may I just interject with one last thing, mate? Apologies for that, but something I wanted to get out was, I think it's a big one, and it's getting bandied around now in the corporate sector, so I'd be remiss to not touch on it, is Stoicism, or that Stoican concept of the morphing of the Spartan mentality with the Stoicism of the Greeks, the ancient Greeks and Romans, in that I'm only learning it again now. Not again, I'm only learning it. You can't change anything in this world really to any great extent except your own reaction. You can control that 100%, how you react to anything that occurs to you. And I know Viktor Frankl talked about that in a number of books and so on through his experiences. That's now learning that no matter what happens to you, reframe it, do whatever you need to do, but control your reaction to it because you own it. It's all yours. No one can force a reaction from you. Only you can. And from that reaction and subsequent behaviors form decisions. And we know that our life's outcome, good, bad, or indifferent, is the collation of all our life decisions.
Well said, well said. Now, thanks for putting that extra bit in there, Doug. A lot of value. I just want to say thank you for today. You've shared a lot. Really enjoyed it. I'm sure the listeners and watchers have really enjoyed it as well. Yeah, just thanks for coming, mate. Great stuff.
Very welcome, Dave, and thank you so much for having me on, mate. Great to see you again.